what are some of the real life mental health struggles that Gen Zs have?
Having a single parent or staying focused in class and not straying after random strippiness.
Okay.
Your whole life and school. Yeah. Depression, when you're depressed, depression comes from like me. I would say cyberbullying from go down, yeah.
I would say the environment and how people act around them.
And how people treat you.
Yeah. If you act positive, if the people around you act positive, you probably gonna act positive. They act negative.
And then it's like a reflection of their
parents.
I'm 70 years old and I really never talked about mental health in my generation. I feel like a myth is that mental health ain't really real. I just got tough and start being a punky chick. The other question is, I feel like struggles for my generation is that they don't really understand that they're addicted to weed and it'll cause mental health problems.
What we just heard is some of the struggles that this generation is facing deal with mental health problems, as well as their outlooks on the issue. All right. You guys have any input on that? One of the things they mentioned that stood out to me was the marijuana issue. Right? It's a very, very prevalent conversation here in our community because it's culturally accepted, even if not legally, right? And that's something I've been going on since Jesus was in flip-flops. So this generation, not alas, don't have nothing to do with we inherited it, right? But let's talk about it. This is their view on their real life situation that they're dealing with right now as a generation, just hearing some of their input on the topic. So tell me, what do you think?
Well, I think that one of the most powerful things was, I think there was a 17-year-old boy, and he said he never had a conversation about mental health.
Right.
He said one of the most common misconceptions is that mental health is a myth, right? So even with him not having conversations about it, he knew that can't be right.
Right.
Can't be right. But, being 17 years old, I know it's a new generation. I didn't really know much about mental health till I went to college. Right?
Okay.
You could see the problems, but you don't put words to it. But, one thing that, we shouldn't be 17 years old. Somebody shouldn't have to go through 17 years of life, almost graduating from high school,
right,
having a conversation about mental health, right? Because hopefully
right,
somebody talked to him about physical health. Hopefully somebody talked to him about safe sex. But mental health just as important, right?
Right. And that's so true.
And I find that it's not openly talked about.
Correct.
So that's why he may have not heard about mental health, and he feel like it's a myth and so forth, because we're not welcoming it, like we said earlier. We're not welcoming it as a normal conversation, and it should be a normal conversation because this is our everyday life, our overall well-being of ourselves. So therefore, we should be able to have a normal conversation, just like how we will talk about sex.
Correct.
And so forth. We need to talk about the signs of mental health and everything like that. So it needs to be more welcoming and open to talk about.
I kind of want to piggyback off of what you said a little bit before I get to your comment, right? Because you mentioned that there's a time frame for when sex ed is a conversation. There's a time frame in their development. There are cues and markers for when certain things need to happen as a child is developing throughout life. Do we need to create the cue and marker for when the mental health starts? Because that's from the very beginning. Correct. You have to nurture that mental health. And a lot of times parents don't know how or even what to look for, simply because of the tradition behind of it. There's never been a space left open for mental health or the discussion, or even how to ensure that your child is healthy mentally. So if you don't have it generationally, how are you passing it on to them? Right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So, but go ahead.
Yes. I'd to add to that, I like to say we noticed the difference also in the male. You spoke about it as the perspective of the female, and he mentioned the fact that you're always told as males growing up, you just need to man up, deal with that. Men don't cry, men don't show weakness.
Right.
It's telling you to suppress those emotions.
Correct.
So a lot of men then, therefore, grow up with a lot of issues where they're not dealing with conflict the right way. They're not knowing how to express themselves because they're told you could never do so.
Correct.
And then they expect that when you see the young females doing it, they're saying, okay, that's just emotions, because they expect that from things. So it further feeds that stigma that's creating the issues where we see less Gen Z males coming into treatment. I'm sure Marcus would agree, and Giselle over there. So we're still trying to get through that. And to answer the second part where you just mentioned, a very valid point, this is why we have spent a lot of time in the school systems doing prevention work and exposing them younger and younger to those conversations of mental awareness.
Right.
And individuals don't realize there's something called adverse childhood experiences.
Right.
And it's those small things that never been addressed all the way up or identified later affects your well-being overall going forward.
On the head. Nice.
Man. See, listen, we're having the conversation, and as a participant, I'm impressed. But as a mother, I got some questions because, but before we go.